your back over. Okay. Let's get them. I need Bill Green over here. He's coming right now. Bill's with the Texas A&M University Forestry Services, and so he's been with his eye on this thing. He's got a passion for it, so that helps. All right. I'm going to go ahead and start now, okay? I'm going to thank all of you for coming. This is not the last time that you're going to be here, by any means. If you haven't fallen in love with it, and if I don't fall in the river, you know, you're definitely going to have this as a part of your life, and that's what we intend to have happen. Let me start from the beginning of when I got involved. That's going on 13 years ago. I came out here and I interviewed, her name was Vitabelle Jagou. Now, that's not Irish, you know, at all. She was the widow of Dookie Jagou, who was one of the grandsons of the original fellow who had the plantation here. Celestine Jagou came out of the foothills of the Pyrenees. The Pyrenees Mountains separate Spain from France there, and he was a Frenchman that came into this part of the country at the time of the Civil War. We're talking about 1862, going on into 1863. His first endeavor when he first arrived was involved in cotton, because everybody was doing cotton. It was what's called the back door of the South, and they were shipping cotton out of Baghdad and paying for the Confederacy. That was the lifeline of the Confederacy. So many millionaires were made with that particular little time in history. And the historical record says that he was a cotton presser. I don't know what that means. Maybe they pressed the bales more confined in order to get on the ships, you name it. But then he came on, after that he started getting his money, and then he developed an import of fine delectables, you know, like the hors d'oeuvres, like a deli. Downtown Brownsville, and he had a saloon that was attached to that, and he was a very, very, very enterprising fellow. Haven't you ever thought, the people in history, you say to yourself, you know, if this guy were to come back to life, or a time machine or whatever, I would really like to see him, right? You've been through that? Well, Celestine Jagou, I had control of the cemetery here for many years, and his family plot is in there. And I always said to myself, boy, God, if he were to come back to life, I would just want to spend 10 minutes with him. You know, very, very interesting fellow. Getting off into 1869, that was when this was all raw land out here, hadn't been cleared. There literally were jaguars and pumas and lobos mexicanos, the whole thing in this area. It was that dense. So this piece of land was part of the El Jardín tract, and there was 640 acres. 640 acres back in the old colonial times is what's called a town site, because you have a mile square, right? And that's what this was. So you had some people that you might have heard of: Captain Kennedy, Mifflin Kennedy, Captain King, then you had Captain Dalzell. These were all steamboat captains. So they bought this piece of land out here, and they formed what was called the La Esperanza Planting Company. And from 1869 on up, that was what it was called. But they didn't do too well with it, these captains, because they were accustomed to steamboats, cattle, and all of that. They weren't farmers. But Celestine Jagou came from France, and he was a farmer. You know, he actually grew grapes back in the old country before he even got here, and it carried on here. So they sold him the piece of land, and he finalized all that in about 1872. See how the timeline is coming up? All right, so he settled in, and he had the type of a dream that I guess a lot of us would want to have, as to, wouldn't you want to have a Garden of Eden at your house? Like you go out in the morning and you pick a pear off of a tree, or grapes, and you know, and it was all there, you know. That's what he had right here. But the incredible thing about this is that when he started this, remember I told you it was all occluded with jungle and all this? The people didn't know what would grow in this ground. They, you know, what is it? Alkaline? Acidic? You know, will it support anything? Will the rain come? Is there enough sun? You name it. He figured that out. He is the father of agriculture for South Texas. Not only that, but he and Georges Brulé, which is another Frenchman, the Brulé sugar plantation up the way here, they figured out how to irrigate this South Texas land, because there's one green vegetated region, and that's the river. Other than that, it's all dry chaparral, right? Very, very parched earth, because you have the mountains of Mexico that stop any rains from coming on over. If you have any water, it's going to be through the river. All right, so he went ahead and developed the canal systems coming from the river and turned this particular spot of land into, as I say, a Garden of Eden with all of the greenery and all of that. He had Sea Island cotton. He had sugar cane. He had like 11,000 banana plants. You know, these are what they call plátano burro, which is a bigger old world type form of plantain. And he had grapes. He had every conceivable type of a fruit you can imagine. Persian limes, key limes, and all of that. The origin of the citrus industry in the valley was not through John McAllen. It was through Celestine Jagou. Okay, so he built this thing up into a beautiful storybook place. Now you see all of these cypress trees, the big trees that are back over in here dispersed throughout. These trees are a main feature of what we're trying to do in this part of the country. We're trying to take that cypress tree and repropagate it. Back at the time when the Spaniards first came up the river, Pineda and all that, 1519, they saw cypress trees that went all the way from the tree line, about 3 miles in from the mouth, all the way up to Roma. There were tens of thousands of cypress trees, these beautiful cypress trees. I think the closest one you can see is that one right there from here. They cut them all down. If you give a man a machete and a piece of land, he's going to cut everything down and turn it into a parking lot, right? That's what happened here. So the trees were cut down because that's what you get. You know, I learned this lesson early in my life. If you're too beautiful, you're going to have problems, right? Okay, because that was the only beautiful tree that was here that was suitable for lumber. What are you going to make a house out of a mesquite? You know, there's not a straight spot on it. You know, ebony, peor, because you can't cut it with dynamite. So the cypresses were the ones that suffered. But Celestine Jagou kept these cypresses here. The cypresses that you see along this stretch here, when I first came 13 years ago, there were 52 of them. Okay. Presently there are 39. I'll tell you this story. When I saw the bridge here, it was all decadent. It was all falling apart and everything. We redid it. I got a grant in order to redo it. But we had to evacuate that little trickle of a water that was in the main stream here out of here so we could get down and do all of the engineering in order to make the bridge. So I thought, you know, when we were through the bridge, I said, okay, you know, bring the water back on. Okay, bring the water. Hey, where's the water? You know, for 8 years. Remember I mentioned there were 52 beautiful cypresses that were 200 to 300 years old? We lost 13 of them in 7 to 8 years. So we finally got this thing going. That's one of the announcements that I'm going to make here. On February 2nd, my father's birthday, Groundhog Day, imagine that. There was an accord that was signed between PUB, the City of Brownsville, and the Corps of Engineers in order to go ahead with the refurbishing of this resaca. It's a $2 million project, of which Brownsville has about 800,000. They're going to dredge it, because if you look there, there's 3 feet of water, and that's at its maximum. This wasn't when I encountered it, because it's whatever water came in here. They're emitting water from the main canal over there. All right, for canoeing and all that, in order for it to be a healthy ecosystem, it's got to have more. So they're going to dredge it out, they're going to do bank improvements, and you're going to have yourself one of the most beautiful parks you could ever imagine for this part of the country. Wouldn't that be grand? Okay. With all kinds of improved infrastructure, your picnic tables and whatever, and a community center and all of that going on. You're going to say, when's this going to happen? All right, when the Corps of Engineers gets their marching orders, because they just signed the accord, right? When they get the marching orders, they say, okay, because it's like a big army. You talk about Army Corps of Engineers. When they get rolling, they're going to contact Brownsville, and they're going to say, okay, look, we're heading in your direction, so we're going to evacuate the water. we're going, because you can't get down here and work with the, what you call the dirt work with mud. Evacuate the water for about a 2-month span, make sure it's dry enough, and then bring in the earth moving equipment in order to sculpt it down into a healthy resaca system again. And then this is going to be a part of the reservoir system for the city of Brownsville. You say, okay, what's the use? Public Utilities has reservoirs, has resacas all over Brownsville, and that's our drinking water, you see. So it helps them, it helps us, and it gives us a beautiful park, right? All right, you're going to see this also tie in with the hike and bike trail, which goes all the way up to Resaca de la Palma, and for that matter goes up to Palo Alto National Battlefield. So that is coming together in such a full manner. And how many of y'all live out here in Southmost? Who lives out here in Southmost? Don't you all think you need a park out here? I mean, the pride of Southmost. I love it. I'm a historian. I knew all of the people. I knew all the players going back to the time it was first beginning. I spend more time out here than you could switch a stick at because I love the legend and the lore and the history of what Southmost has. So we're going to develop this park up in order to be something that the people from Southmost can be proud of. All right. And, yeah. You might not more than you could chew. Okay, I got Bill Green here. He's with the Texas A&M Forestry Services, and he's been an ally in this project because you know, we're trying to get the key people in order to get to move this project forward. And you better believe it, if we have Texas A&M Forestry Services involved, there's going to be some creative thinking that's going to take place here. Let me give you just one more word about some creative thinking, then I'll let Bill say a word here as well. When you come into a project like this, your first thought is, oh, it's beautiful, let's just go ahead and make the little the changes that'll make it people friendly, and then boom, that's it. No, that's not it. You got to go a step further. I was over at a friend's house just about 2 weeks ago, and who was at that same meeting? The national president of the American Butterfly Association. Did you put that together in your mind already? Yes. A butterfly reserve here? So that's what I'm going to present to the city as well. We can plant the what's called host plants and the nectar plants all along these banks, and so it could be another layer of beauty that will serve this park with the flowers, the hummingbirds, and the birds, and all of that. Now, where's Jessica? Lotus? She here? All right. Anyway, all right. She lives down here, and her husband told me when I came out. Oh, this must be about 2 years ago. He says, "Gene, yeah, when we bought out here, there was water in here, the little water that sustained it." And they had a full ecosystem. Now catch this. Catch how important this is. Because what happened there was that everything builds upon one another. You have the reptiles, you have the birds, you have the insects, you have the mammals, you have all of that coexist in a living environment like this. You take the water away, where'd they go? Away. They left. And that's what Chewy was saying. He says, it was so sad. Before, there was just a hustle and bustle. You get up in the morning, you could hear the birds and all of this, and then all of a sudden, there's silence. So that's one of the devastating things about this going for that length of time. Now with all of the butterflies coming back in the picture and all that. All right, now here's the final feature that I'll tell you about, is that I was talking to Farmer Dave over here with the community garden. And we were what you would call thinking outside the box, which you got to do from time to time. And I said to him, I said, okay, well look, I got the butterfly guy interested. Can you all propagate the nectar plants and all that, the little seedlings, and then we can, you know, you can follow that, and then we can plant them here, because you got a nursery right here doing that. And then we expanded the conversation a step further. We said, hey, with all of that going on, now, bearing in mind that there are so few cypress trees, Montezuma cypress, by the way, that are here on the Delta region, can you all propagate the little seedlings so we can stock the resacas in Brownsville with the cypress trees again? You see how this is growing? So therefore, that's the plan as well to do on that. So there's many different parts of this, but they're all good. they're all coming together in a manner that's really going to serve the community. All right, Bill, what do you have to say about how your institution, and number one is start with, if you could please, not to direct you, what is the beauty and the benefit of the Taxodium mucronatum?
Okay, hello everybody, and thanks Gene. Yeah, with the Montezuma cypress, we'll get to that, but I think first everyone should really thank Gene for all the work he's done on this project.
It's a labor of love, and that's about as far as.
And I think there's been a lot of love from volunteers too. Like you voluntered working here, and there's other volunteers.
This is Mr. Paradise Trail right here.
Okay. So there's a lot of work going into this project, and just all of us here, how good it is to be out here, just spending time outside. And you mentioned for the southmost park, I mean, just to have shade in the middle of our summer, it's going to be nice out here. It already is, and Gene's working on it. It's just going to get better and better. So thanks, Gene, and all the volunteers. But this is a really good project. Bringing back in the water, it's not easy to get those types of things done, and Gene's been able to do it. So good work. The Montezuma cypress, there's another cypress that's similar called bald cypress. You can call this Montezuma cypress or Montezuma bald cypress. But this one, the bald cypress grows these types of knees. The Montezuma doesn't have that. They grow to huge sizes. There's a huge tree, the Tule tree down in Mexico. Just gets really tall and huge diameter trunk. And to have this area of Montezuma cypress and now protected and bringing in the water is just going to really help preserve this riparian area, bringing in wildlife, other vegetation. It's a great project, so really good. And the Texas A&M Forest Service is supporting Gene in this, and all of you that live around here, thanks a lot, Gene.
Good. All right. There's when you have a difference, people that have been to San Antonio before, you've seen the river walk and all that. Okay, let me explain that, because that again points to the pricelessness of this tree. This tree is what's called the Montezuma cypress. The other one's called the bald cypress. There's two distinct species of trees there. The bald cypress only comes in from the east, off into the San Antonio region and all that, Castroville, and that's as far as it goes, because it lives on what's called acetic soil. This is alkaline soil. If you buy a bald cypress at the nursery and all of that, that thing's going to be like that forever. It's never going to grow, because it's just not the right one that you need for this part of the country. So
the Montezuma is native here all the way down to Guatemala.
Right. Now, have you been to Falcon Dam and all of that up there? You know how the waters of the Sabinas, the Rio Sabinas, there's about 4 rivers that they have a confluence with the Rio Grande. They come from south to north, and then they hit the Rio Grande, and that's where these seeds came from. Eons ago, like 1,000 years, 2,000 years. That's why this is a native plant now that we have. That is what's called the Montezuma cypress, and it's got various characteristics that are a lot different from what you can see in the river walk in San Antonio. All right, let me get to the thing that you've got in your hands there. The petition that you have is extremely important. This is very important. Okay, I have a resolution before City Commission right now in order to name this place, because when I was doing my research, I'm basically a historian by trade, and I'm doing all kinds of various stories and all of this, and then I was looking at a story to do on what was called Rancho El Cielo. It's down in by Victoria in Mexico, and so I started looking for like accommodations, different types of parks, and so I looked to see if this was mentioned in there at all. In the world books, you know, you have the Sable Palm Sanctuary, right? It's got a name, you know. This poor orphan child doesn't even have a name. Oh, pobrecito. You know, can you imagine? And so what the mission is here with that petition that you have in your hands there, please fill it out. And I'm not going to be sitting here because I'm not the kind of guy that will say you got to do it this way. No. It's got to be democratic. It's got to be in a manner that's going to be from your heart. But let me tell you a little story about the two different types, options of the names there. The first name is La Esperanza. Remember I mentioned about the planting company that happened right after the Civil War over 100 years ago? It's getting towards 130 years ago now. Well, that one was formed as the La Esperanza Planting Company, and then it was carried on by the Jagous. The Jagous lived right over there in that big house that burned down, you know, and all of that. We knew, my family knew the Jagous. We knew Dookie, we knew Vitabel, and my father knew Melvin and all of that, going back to my great-grandfather knew Celestine Jagou. This is a marvelous family. What they gave Southmost, what they gave South Texas, was a tremendous gift. In the name of La Esperanza, farms, whatever else. Okay, so that's one type right there, one possibility of a naming. Because what are they going to name this park over here? The La Esperanza Park or the La Posada Park? Let me tell you about La Posada. I talked to a fellow last night on the West Coast, and he was up almost 80 years old. He says, "Ah, sí, recuerdo La Esperanza." That's what they called it back in those days. Either the Jagou or La Esperanza. And I can't tell you how many of the old timers, because I talk to the old timers every day, the 90-year-olds. But hey, watch out, you know, don't make an appointment with me to get an interview, because you'll die. I can't tell you how many of the 90-year-olds like, okay, I'll be right over, and then their daughter says, no, ya se murió. You know, oh, I missed it by 15 minutes. Yeah. But anyway, so what happens is that the old timers, and I've been coming out here since I was that high, they always called it either the Jagou or the La Esperanza. All right, now you have 1977, right? Melvin just died. He lived in there. And so then what he did was his widow and Vitabel, who lived down at the other end down there, Dookie's widow, were approached by a man by the name of Neil Simmons. Okay, that was a developer that developed all of this La Posada number 1, number 2, and number 3 back from 1977 into the 1980s. Okay. He got crosswise with the city to tell you how this came about, and I'm not going to badmouth anybody, but he wanted to turn this area into a colonia. He fought the city. The city had to sue him for saying, you got to put infrastructure in. You got to put the, you know, the lights, the water, the drainage and all that. You just can't sell a lot, you know, and then walk away from it. And so they sued him. Anyway, so that's the La Esperanza versus your La Posada. Now, what did he name the streets after? The places where he spent most of his life, in motels. No, I didn't say that. No. Anyway, these are all motels that La Posada, La Fiesta, La Siesta, La Ramada, and all of that, you know. So, in fact, they got a plaque naming him on the Ramada that's outside of Kerrville. No. So anyway, so you either have a choice of going through the history aspect. Southmost needs a gift. They need something that's going to be long-term and say, okay, you can be proud of this. This is a part of history. And that is in the Esperanza versus the La Posada. So make your choice in there, which one you want, because you understand. Yes? Yep. Jagou, exactly. Now I'm for the Jagou. Yeah. And you see, there's the old timers talking again, because they said, yeah, I live out in the Jagou. How many times have you heard that? You see? Now, I'm actually going to make a subchapter of this petition to city mentioning the Jagou. But I'll be honest with you. That's a hard sell, that one, because they can't pronounce it. Jagou, Jagon, worse than that. So I mean, I cut to the quick in order to do it this way. Now, on the La Posada that you have here, those that live in the Posada neighborhood, you know that for a neighborhood. But now bear in mind this particular very, very special half-mile tract of land is going to be all over the world now. It's going to be on those guidebooks for naturalists. They're going to come down and they're going to see this is the last stand of the Montezuma cypress in the United States. So having a name in there that's historic, just makes sense in building a project that has greater depth, and also for the dignity of what Southmost really has as a part of its heritage. Okay, so if you could go ahead and fill that out, please, and drop it off at the desk over there. City requires that you have to have your name and address on there in order for it to be valid. We're not trying to pry or anything, but here's an added incentive on that. If you put an email on there, I've got tons of things that are in my camp. City has 15 tons in their camp in all of this. You want to be on top of what's happening here? If you got your email there, I'm going to send you a newsletter. Is that good?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, any questions?
Eugene, do we vote for one right here? Do we circle one? Or
Yep, circle one.
Okay, okay.
A or B, you know, whatever. And do it as your heart desires. Because, believe me, you know, I love this place, and I love it for a reason, and it's not just because it's a name, because of, you know, what it is and whatever else. And if, on the 300 required signatures, if they come through, and 200 of them are La Posada, I'll go for that, you know. That is just the way it goes. But I told you the reasoning why. I say about your heritage, it goes way back, a lot deeper. Your those that are here now, your grandfathers and your great-grandfathers, they were calling it the Jagou or the La Esperanza. and all
What
that.
years did the La Esperanza name start?
1869,
And La Posada?
1977, going on 1978. It's only been 40 years that the La Posada has been in existence. Whereas if you go back to 1869, you know, it's been 127 years that the La Esperanza has been in the picture. And think about it also. What does La Esperanza mean?
Hope. Hope.
That's not bad. Huh? You know, they could have picked a worse name. I could come up with about 15 of them. But, you know, hope and the hope. Now, all right, there again, you got to watch me, because when I started with a twinkle in my eye, back off. But I was thinking to myself, have you been to San Antonio on the Riverwalk during the Christmas and you see all the lights and you see the gondolas going down there? Couldn't we have what's called a Xochimilco here? You know what Xochimilco is? In Xochimilco in Mexico, outside of Mexico City, they have the floating gardens, and they have the gondolas of chalanes, and they have the flowers and all this, and you go down the water path there, and it is so beautiful. And that's what's called Xochimilco. For Charro days, back in 1949 and then again in 1975, we had a Xochimilco on the Resacas of Brownsville. Now, why couldn't we have one here? Why couldn't that benefit the taquerias and all the restaurants that are here? Pump money into Southmost, you see? So those type of things can come together. This piece of land up here is going on 4 acres. Why couldn't we have a festival there that would be a Southmost festival? You have Sombrero Fest in the center of Brownsville, and then all of the merchants that are in here, and we're starting to gather up the names of the different restaurants that are out here, and they're premium. I mean, I was blown away and then last week and had a chopped barbecue sandwich, and these people could feature themselves. And people from all over could come in, and they could have their puestecito there, and they could give me 3 tacos, and they come out, boy, I'm coming. Where's your restaurant? Over here on Southmost Road. See, it expands on and on and on, incrementally, for what Southmost is going to, what's going to benefit Southmost. All right, any questions?
Any cemeteries in this location?
Huh?
Any cemeteries?
Yeah, but that's a trick question. You know where Roselawn Cemetery is over there?
Yeah.
I don't live in it, but I live close. Okay, so I'm in charge of another committee for the Cameron County for the cemeteries, and so I go out with the ranchito cemeteries. There are several ranchito cemeteries that are nearby here, and El Saus, La Estrella. They got over here that when you have the Brûlé, that's not the old Brûlé. They had what was called Longoreño Banco, the Arenal, and all of those little cemeteries that are still there. You can still see the crosses and all that. But for Jagou, I mean, for many years I was in charge of the Brownsville Cemetery, the old cemetery, and I solved about 3 murders
Whoa.
Yeah, because if you go to the cemetery, you hear the chisme, right? You know, oh, that guy killed him. What do you mean you killed him? You know, and so that didn't come out in the Herald, you know? But so I was talking to, in the big house before it burned down, there was one of the relatives of Mrs. Jagou who was named Scriber. Her name was Gail Scriber. And I kind of had a liking for her in the first grade, you know? Yeah, first grade, I started early. And so she was her niece. And so we were talking a little later and all that. And she says, yeah, I was talking to my aunt and I looked out of the front window over to one corner over there to a 45-degree angle, and there were crosses right there. So there's crosses right out here, right between the brick kilns and the old burned out shell. And I know they're there. She knows they're there. Now all of you know that they're there. You know?
Right.
So yeah. You know any other ones?
No, that I know of, no. But I know a lot of people say it must be somebody died over here because it's haunted.
Oh, haunted. Look, you know, don't go to Hollywood.
Especially along the canal.
Yeah. Okay. No, but those were in the dark of the night, you know, the burials.
Well, does everybody know you're getting healthier just being out here?
Yeah,
Just spending time outside?
breathing the ozone
There's
and all
a
of that.
national initiative going on called Healthy Trees, Healthy Lives. Just being outside,
Yep.
you're doing better with your stress, your blood pressure. Kids spending time outside do better at school. So
Bike riding.
Healthy Trees, Healthy Lives. You can look that up on Google and
Yeah.
and
Whose project is that?
it's national.
Oh, it's a national
Yeah.
deal. Okay, see there?
Southern Forest, private property or public?
All right, good question. Is that private property or public? It came in stages. Okay. You see that ditch that's on the other side there? Okay. That ditch wasn't always there. You had the Resaca here. When Celestine Jagou came in 1872, he had to get water. So he brought it from a pumping plant. It was on what's called Borrego Banco. You know where Borrego Banco is? By Los Nogales? Down the way here, off of Tulipan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Está la lomita.
Yeah. Okay, that's where Rusty Monses has all his excavating stuff and all that. That's where the original water came through. And you know the canal that used to be over here above ground? Now it's underground, the main canal. That's back in 1872. That's when they dug the first canal out here. We forgot how to carry water. You know the Romans, they had that wheel and they had the jug. See there? Yeah. Okay, now here's another thing. I want you to really kind of like take my advice on this for what it's worth. Don't live in Hollywood, okay? And they say plantations. Oh, you know, you can and all that. No, this whole there are plantations of every time of and fiber and feature that you could have in the world. In fact, my father was born on a plantation, a coffee plantation in Veracruz. You see, it doesn't mean that there are slaves. A lot of people are hesitant to even associate the name plantation. You notice in the verbiage that I have there, I didn't want to get into that cat fight. No way. So, but the thing is, on a plantation can be for anything. It's a farm. It's basically a farm. And so you know, that'll put that story to rest real fast, right?
And the plantations here were established after the Civil War, right?
Yes, they were. Every place. All right, now here's another part. This is getting technical. You had 4 or 5 plantations down here. You had the Jagou. You had the Piper plantation. This is the turn of the century, going in 1907. You had the Brûlé plantation. Then you had the Ray plantation. You know, Fount Ray and all that family, they came down from Alexandria, Louisiana in 1904. So you had about 4 very large plantations. The majority of these plantations, in order to qualify for a plantation, it's usually 1,000 acres, huh?
La Encantada, there's another one, no? By La Encantada area, in San Benito, that area, La Encantada.
Okay, well, there are some real big ranches and farms up in that region, along the rivers where you had the big tracts. And when I say 1,000 acres, that was like the Noriega plantation, Rancho Viejo. You know, that was in modern times, coming through the turn of the century, that was 6,000 acres. It's a large farm. There's nothing that is bad in the connotation of a plantation, especially what we're trying to build in the beauty of this place. You see? All right, so that's it.
Will this connect to the Southwest Bike Trail?
It will. It isn't that grand. It'll connect up with the Southwest Bike Trail,
The hike
exactly.
and bike connections, when would they be made?
Those are actually on the drawing board right now because they actually finished the part behind Porter going through.
Right.
Yeah, the next stage is this one. I think it's phase 5 or something like that. That's what I remember. But that is ready to receive this.
It'll be part of the overall Caracara trail.
Right. I've heard several names. Caracara, I have heard that name.
That's the
but,
whole valley trail.
yeah, right. But this one is actually, the moniker that I've heard on it is the Southmost Bike Trail.
Yeah.
And it's already on the master planning. All right. So, we ready to go? The
mentioned-
shovels are over there, you know. Huh?
You mentioned we